we are live. Hey, I even know how to spell. It says Caleb Beers underneath your face. I'm guessing that beeping sound means something about the stream going live. Ooh boy. Can't? What happened? Oh, this is probably because I have a different... Ah. That sucks. There, let's try that. Okay. Ah. What in the world do you... So, I have a secret. Or at least we have a secret. What it was that we were reading, that we're not going to read until the end of the stream. Caleb and I were reading a really nice piece, which we're not going to share with you until it's about time for the stream to conclude. So thank you for showing up. Okay. That was weird. This is our new way of doing a mic check, by the way. Yes, I mean, you try to blow my ears out on from time to time. So there's nothing else I can quite do to return the favor. But, you know, sneezing comes close. So I was doing a bit of reading on Quora. And, well, I was actually really curious as to one thing that I've noticed many people can do that I seem to really have difficulty with. As a speaker, as the person who's actually saying something, maintaining eye contact with another person while keeping track of what it is that you're going to say. I can listen and I can watch someone's face and keep track of people's emotions and so on, but I find it very difficult to keep track of what it is that I'm going to say if I'm in the process of keeping eye contact with the person that I'm discussing matters with. Oh, nice. Uh-oh, what does it say? Won't you be my neighbor? Oh no. Let's see. Oh. Uh-huh. Woohoo! Shanty's here. Won't you be my neighbor? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a lovely day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Yes, it's a neighborly day in this beauty hood. See, isn't it amazing how, the difference in between a clean-shaven man singing nicely and me singing like that? I mean, it conjures up very different images, doesn't it? Yes, uh, yes. All right, can you say something now? Or how about now? All right, how about now? No, it just sucks. No, it's not. It's very strange. Um, could you try restarting it or killing the call and coming back? No. Oh no, I didn't anticipate this to happen. All right, let's see if that does any better.
Can you guys hear me on the stream? And what does my monitor say?
It says that it says that you're making noise. Can you say something else, please? You're making noise.
I am making noise?
At least according to this. Oh boy, there's really horrible lag now.
I am making noise? Okay, yeah, now now they can hear me.
Great.
Excellent.
Great.
Welcome everybody to the episode 20 of Culling Sacred Cow.
I think it's 21. I'm not sure. I hope it's 21. Ah, that explains a lot. So what sacred cows are we going to call today?
I always make noise. I don't think she'd appreciate it if I didn't.
James is here. Okay, great. I was wondering I was wondering why I wasn't able to read the chat and why everything had just got static. It's because I wasn't logged in. But for some reason it still had the chat up from the previous stream.
Weird. So the question then becomes...
Won't you be my neighbor?
That is so scary. That's some Deliverance shit right there. That's some, I keep on thinking you're gonna ask me to squeal like a piggy.
Oh, but no, I wouldn't do that. Squealing like a piggy is so last century.
What, do you want me to bail like a goat?
It reminds me of what I like to do on Tuesdays.
Goat fuckers anonymous. Well, this is a very high quality stream.
Well, we have cows to call, right? I mean,
right.
I really should edit the I really should edit the cute little cow thing. There needs to be an axe. There needs to be a bloody axe in the picture.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moo.
Yes.
Eeny, meeny, miny, you.
Ah, excellent. So what was it? Yeah, I'm having difficulty in terms of keeping eye contact while talking. Not while listening, but while talking.
Well, on what level does that take place? Like, you find your speech interrupted if you're getting cross interference from the other person?
Well, that does happen. You know, when you go and you see the deer in the headlights look, like, oh crap, this person isn't gonna let me finish what I'm saying because this is going over their head. Yeah, that can happen. But it's mostly that, I find myself, quite captivated by the other person and trying to sort out their emotions rather than thinking about what it is that is,
That you want to say?
yes.
Well, Try that trick where you look between their eyes.
Yeah, that scares the living daylights out of them.
Why?
It looks like you're just trying to stare them down. Whenever I've tried that on somebody, it's like, just don't do that. Whatever they don't realize what it is that I'm doing, but they just tell me, don't do that. You look like you're gonna, run over me or something.
What I always get is the 1, 2, 3, 4. Look to the left and stare some more.
It's actually different here because if you stare at the green light while you're talking, it's the green light's close enough to the camera for it to pretty well allow you to to say what you have to say. And then if you have the text and you keep the text toward the top of your screen, people barely notice the difference unless your eyes are really moving back and forth a lot when you're reading. So you can sort of kind of keep eye contact with your viewers while you're streaming, but then when it comes to interpersonal communication, I just find that I'm a lot better listener than I am a talker.
I see.
Or maybe that has more to do with the kinds of things that I say.
That brings to mind something interesting for me that's been on my mind lately, if I can talk about it a bit.
Go
It's
ahead.
decorum. Now, the idea behind a sense of decorum is that if we have a sense of decorum, then that creates some consistency in day-to-day life because it creates expectations for any given situation that have to be fulfilled, and consistency allows you to pursue long-term plans because it creates stability. The problem is that when people can't process anything that's indecorous, well, at that point, it becomes kind of an issue. That's why I like doing things that are horribly inappropriate, partially because I'm naturally a troll, but also because people have to get smacked with something weird every once in a while. Keeps them on their toes.
Well, it is an attention-getting device, certainly, among many other things. Being a weirdo is a completely legitimate conversation / communication tactic.
Right. Like when I was out with a friend once as a teenager, and as a teenager I was so socially inept that he was afraid I was going to embarrass him, and I could tell he was nervous because there were girls there. So I said, "Are you afraid I'm going to offend the 3 vaginas sitting over there?" Like really loud.
And
he shat bricks. It was pretty funny.
nothing quite like labeling someone's fear. Nothing quite like labeling someone's fear. Though, it's interesting because I find that, at least for the kinds of people I like spending time with, my choice of... I mean, I might not go so far as to say what you said, but it's really not that hard to get away with being offensive in some aspect. At least I notice in person I can get away with it a lot more than I can on stream. Apparently on stream, if I say or do something offensive, people report it. But in real life, at least I've noticed I can say things that would be offensive, and they're never taken as such, due to the fact that there is the direct element of interpersonal communication, and you can speak directly to the people you're with rather than to a more generic you.
I see.
That's actually probably why the stream goes so much better when there are two people, or at least at least it seems to me that for the people that like to watch my stream, it goes better because I can go and I can talk to you, and you can come and you can talk to me, and we're at least having a tangible, real person that we're addressing whatever it is we're saying to.
Right. You know, it also gives you a sounding board and a noisemaker for when you got to go take a dump and all that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely useful in that regard.
James says, relax your eyes when you do that. So basically, don't stare the other person. Don't stare the other person down, I'm guessing.
I mean, that's always a possibility. I mean, I think that one thing, as far as decorum goes, though, you know, a small breach of decorum can be used to relax a situation, because I've diffused situations before by acting like a goofball. Like,
oh yeah. Could you give some examples?
Let me think. Like when two people are about to have an argument, and one guy was talking about how nice his feather couch was, and the other guy in the room goes, "Oh, what, is your family gonna retire on this couch?" You know, and I sense that they're about to have one of their little cat fights that they have sometimes, and I had slept on it the night before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like the pun is like a smoke screen; it distracts.
Yeah, and even though it is what it is.
Right.
Oops. It accomplishes things.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I've done that. I've done similar things, and it usually does come down to distraction. Another one, I diffused a similar argument because a dog came into the room. The dog's name was Carl, and Carl was adorable, even though his one purpose was to love you, even though he looked totally retarded. And I managed to calm the situation down by looking down at him and very loudly saying, "You're a dog!" and started petting him. And then the conversation was about Carl, the dog, and how cute he was.
So quaternary FE is more useful than tertiary FI.
Well, tertiary FI is more useful in the long term because it's where the force of will comes from, because it has convictions. Kind of like how quaternary SE is more useful in the short term for just noticing specific things because you're not off in la-la land, but tertiary SI is more useful in the long term because it helps with theoretical model building.
I see.
That's the thing. Both of those functions are very useful long term, the tertiary ones. The quaternary ones are more like a parlor trick. Or like a very small scale sort of a twiddly thing.
Well, I've noticed that it's possible to develop those in a really weird way.
How so?
Well, I don't think that I would have gotten so involved in running in my teenage years if it weren't for that.
True.
So if you can find something that satisfies it and turn it into a habit, then yeah, then that can work quite nicely.
That is true.
So what would be a nice habit for FE?
A nice habit for FE?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny because normally I accomplish the stuff that people use FE for is mostly done by any. Like when you're listening to a piece of classical music and you're listening to a movement, the movement is getting close to the end, you can feel it's pulling toward the end. And I find that same sensation is what I typically use for gouging other people's emotions, or gauging, rather.
For gouging others' emotions. G-O-U-G-I.
No, that's what TI is for.
I'm going to gouge your emotions. Hee.
No, I don't want to be your neighbor. Anyway, but yeah, I gauge people's emotions by means of any, because it works for that. It actually works beautifully. But I'm trying to think what a good habit for FE is. I found dancing helps.
That is quite interesting. Were you? I'm trying to remember. Were you talking on the Discord chat when Yera came, or was that just Steven?
When who came?
Okay, so you didn't. You weren't there for that. Okay, so insofar as MBTI is concerned, and to some extent I take it with a grain of salt, and to other extents I can say that it does explain quite a bit. Well, I have another ENTP friend, and he lives very close here, and it's tertiary for him, right? Because what 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 are flipped in between E and INTP. So with this thing taking place, I think it's this. Yeah, it's this. With that thing taking place with the 4 functions, he mentioned really enjoying dancing, which is something I've never particularly been able to get into, except for very strict traditional styles with things that you do and things that you don't do, and a clear set of rules delineating all of that, and then you just have one template that you follow for the rest of your days, and that's it. But yeah, with it being a tertiary function as opposed to a quaternary function, it manifests itself very differently. But I can definitely see how if one were to develop it even as a quaternary function, that it would probably turn into something like that. And dancing, and that would also fulfill physical needs. It would be good. It would be actually a very good form of exercise.
Right. Yeah.
I wonder, would singing satisfy that?
Oh yes, very much so. Singing to myself when I'm alone.
Singing, music in general, probably.
Yes, very much so. Like, I remember one time driving home, and for like 20 straight minutes I was humming this weird tune that sounded like some kind of Egyptian harvest song. Not sure where it came from. I'm unique.
Unique.
Uniqua.
Alright. And this was actually a Quora question a long time ago that I answered. It was one of the earlier questions I answered. And is, would you name your kid Yunique? Why would anyone do that?
Why indeed?
Ah.
You won't be able to hear it, but I'm going to plink while we talk.
Oh. Yeah, you can sort of hear. Can you play It's More Than a Feeling?
No.
I'll remove the sound or the music from our stream for now.
Excellent. Let me see if I can get the lead jack is broken. I soldered it, but I screwed it up. But it may work well enough for you to hear if it is done correctly. If done right, no can avoid.
Did you get new strings, or you just never clipped the strings off in the first place?
I just never clipped them off. I never do. I think it adds character. And I'm lazy.
Ah.
Mostly because I'm lazy.
Oh, there was a really cool there's a really cool tool that I found. It's a string tightener. So basically, it is it's a crank. You attach it to the tuning knob, and then you can just crank it really quickly to tighten the strings down when you're restringing your guitar. And then on the other end is a set of clippers. So you can so in the one tool you can both tighten your strings down very quickly and clip off the extra.
I see.
So for any of you who play guitar, that I don't even know what that's called. I just know I saw it in a music store. This makes perfect sense. This is great. Somebody made a tool that was actually useful.
Come on. At some point I'm going to solder this thing the right way, but whatever.
Stare in between their eyes, but more using periphery vision. No, you can stare at the location, but just try to see everything out of your eyes and focus. Ah, nice. I see. Okay. Well, this has been quite pleasant.
Has it? This
Yes.
convo?
Yes. It's nice to be able to relax.
Come on.
So, what do you think that is some people's fascination with dark music, metal music, and things like that, and then other people's fascination with things like reggae and...
I remember when I was young, I even liked in video games, I always liked it when the music was minor key. And I didn't even really listen to music until I was 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't big into music because all the music that everyone listened to was of no interest to me. The only music I really liked was the video game music.
Was it pop music that everyone was interested in?
Yes.
I'm trying to think. Pop music of the late 90s? This stuff is horrible.
Oh yeah, like The Offspring and stuff. Like it elevates stupidity to an art form, you know?
The Offspring. I'm trying to remember.
Pretty fly for a white guy.
Ah.
Why don't you get a job? Keep them separated.
Mm-hmm.
It was catchy. It was just dumb as hell. Gotta keep them separated. Yeah. That's all of that I want to hum. What?
Oh, wow. That's horrible. Oh.
Yeah, no. Oh, okay. If I just let it out, it works. It's because the wires were touching. That's what was going on.
Hmm. Could you turn the volume down a little bit, though?
Well, sorry.
You're doing it. You blow my ears out again.
See, where's my pick? I got pits hanging around. I know I do. There's. I need my pit, my plectrum.
Plectrum.
Plectrum. I want a plectrum that's made from mixed silver and gold.
That would be a. I think that would be a little bit harder than is necessary. Like it would change the way it feels.
Yikes. That fell over.
Huh?
Hope it didn't break the monitor.
I hope so too.
Nope. Monitor's fine.
Oh, good.
Is that a manageable volume?
It's a little high still. It's about 9 or 10 decibels too high.
Okay, so if we double the distance to the mic,
And then that'll remove it by 3, so that means you would need to double the distance to the mic again.
how about doing that?
That's right about where it needs to be. I don't know how to send Go challenges either. Oh, question. You're hijacking my brain.
Oh, that's why. That's why. This is like trying to talk while maintaining eye contact, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's the exact same phenomenon about the use of one's energy or the use of one's mental faculties. I was wondering. So when you're done with your new training, and you have your new role. What's your schedule going to look like? So second shift Sunday through Thursday.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the same. I might have done like Wednesday, Thursday, or something, but I'll just shift the parlor over.
Oh, nice.
Woohoo!
Has anyone conducted a study to see whether happy music or sad music, or whether major music or minor music is more popular throughout like all cultures and all recorded time and so on?
I don't think so. You do have a lot of folk songs in minor key, like that ridiculous Finnish polka.
But then again, these folk songs are all from northern countries.
That is true. It seems like the further north you go, the more minor key and horrible sounding it gets.
Horrible sounding.
It gets darker.
Yes. Oh, there's the lovely there's a Finnish version, because I don't know the Russian version. Siperian lakeus on suuri, siellä Sonja lunta lapioi. It's it's it's
Poljushka polje. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
and the song that I was singing, the theme is uh, basically an old lady that lives in a commune that doesn't have anything to eat except for cabbage soup. I don't know if it's a function of the mic, but the when you were getting to the mid range of the fretboard, it started sounding a lot more clear. quite pleasant.
I love picking up 12 frets above wherever you fret. It gives it that chiming like.
Well, it's resonance. Oh, nice.
Do we even have any viewers?
Yeah, there's 4 people sitting here watching you play.
What the? I guess when on Quora where I threatened to fuck people in the butt if they didn't watch it worked. I'll play a metal song while I do it.
One thing I've noticed is a little interesting is that little children's songs are, or at least songs that are written for little children in present day, are a lot more simple than real music.
Yes, whereas older children's songs like Frere Jacques were rounds or Row 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 Your Boat.
Yeah. And even so, it's an arpeggio down. Do, so, mi, do.
Ah.
Down a fourth, down a third, down a third. What key were you playing that in? Was that A? A. So A, E, C sharp, A.
Yeah. So, why do you think children's songs have gotten simpler?
Expectations. I mean,
Music is much less a part of our lives, too.
well, if you think about the way we consume music, it actually, I think, goes from consumption to production of music, or production to consumption, because what happened before we had record players? What happened before we had phonographs? What happened before we had all those things? You end up having to produce the music or hire somebody else to produce the music. Music was much more valuable per note of music written or played. The value is much higher. Now you wind up having the market saturated with crap. And people view it as more reasonable to just listen to the crap made by somebody else than to sing or play something of your own. And
Right.
so, there's this rich repertoire of folk songs, rich repertoire of hymns. There were things that people would sing on a daily basis in days of old that don't get sung anymore, or don't get played anymore all that much, because it's only a handful of a few people that are actually responsible for making music anymore. And that's partially due to the fact that music has been decreased in value so much that you can't even have that many local artists as would have been existing at some other point, because why would you? You can download all the music that you ever wanted from the iTunes store.
Yeah, people suck, and that's why I want to be a hermit. I want to be a hermit. That's what I'll be. Out there in the woods and the forest and the trees. Out there in the wilderness with you next to me.
Just remember that when I fly my helicopter onto your property, don't shoot me down.
Because that hermit check does contain a surface-to-air missile silo. I know it doesn't look like it does, but it does. And the missile might be made of wood, but I'm a pretty creative motherfucker.
I mean, if it's a high enough velocity missile, it doesn't matter what it's made of. If the kinetic energy alone of the thing is enough to blow something to smithereens.
True.
Why
Might
do
have
I
bombs
find
made from coconuts for extra hilarity.
I mean, if you think about, okay, a coconut is roughly, it's bigger than, I think a coconut's about the size of how much uranium you'd need. Yeah, that's about the amount of uranium you would need.
Watch the foxes and the deer.
So, how do you view? I'm pretty sure I know how you view bullying in the school, but how do you view bullying in the workplace?
Bullying in what?
The workplace, and how to deal with those lovely
bullying?
Folks. Huh?
What kind of bullying?
What is that song even? What's the name of that song?
Misirlou. Misirlou. It depends. You mean like social bullying, like this nigga writing to himself, we all go and die?
Well, I guess we can start with that.
What I should have done was
what you should have done was
socially before he could.
But I'm assuming that the thought didn't actually occur to you to preempt that situation, or did it?
Oh, the thought never even occurred.
Because that's just so stupid. That is so absolutely asinine and stupid behavior that someone with a functioning brain might not even consider it. Or at least one would assume, and this is obviously a wrong assumption to make, that most people in HR would respond appropriately in terms of, if somebody goes and writes a note, this nigga writing to himself, we all gonna die. If someone's passing notes like that, you'd think that that person would be the one getting in trouble. If anyone is to get in trouble.
But I mean, people, it's whoever pulls the trigger first, and yeah, it's stupid, but you got to learn to navigate it, so you have to learn how to navigate it. Full stop.
Well, that's why. Well, maybe that's why the INTP needs to be a hedgehog and the INTJ needs to be a porcupine.
How do you mean?
Well, the INTP is less threatening looking, but still needs to have the hedgehog is less threatening looking than a porcupine, but both have the same general function of bristling oneself up to make oneself untouchable at appropriate times.
I'd rather be a sea cucumber and just fart my lungs all over them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So how's your day been?
It's training at work, taking a new position.
I mean, I gather obviously that has been. I'm just trying to draw parallels with the music that you're making and trying to see if there are any, or if you're somehow dissociating with the music that you're playing.
This is the music I make in a blog saying.
We still need to make that ASMR video.
Sounding like this.
I think that your noise canceling started to cancel out the sound of your guitar.
Okay, like this then.
I can't hear you anymore.
You can't?
No, it's interesting because there I can hear now. This is quite pleasant.
Monologue.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a lovely day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? capable of playing anything in a major key?
Not really.
I was not gonna say you're screwing up such simple things as row, row, row your boat because you're going down into a minor key just naturally.
I don't play happy music like at all.
It's so great. I mean, when listening to you trying to sort through a major key, it's great.
Inspector Gadget.
Oh boy. I've only ever seen Inspector Gadget once. I mean, once as in like there was an Inspector Gadget marathon on and I watched it from beginning to end.
Dun 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 dun. That is kind of funny because I've had friends who have complained about this. Like, Caleb, do you ever play anything that doesn't sound ominous and foreboding?
So why would anyone complain about that? That's nothing to complain about. I mean, this just perhaps Captain Obvious can come and state that, but I wish I had a really raspy singing voice. The singing voice that sounds like you just did nothing but.
Smoke cigarettes for 30 years.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of swallow sand coated ball bearings, but
Ah. Like the Popeye smoked an entire Marlboro factory thing.
yes.
Like Tom Waits.
Hmm. Let's see. Hey,
It would sound better with distortion.
yeah. Well, the other problem is uh, Discord audio isn't exactly the best for picking it up anyway.
True.
I'm sorry. I think that if you wanted to do that, you would get an awful lot higher quality if you wound up recording it. Although one of the very nice things is, at least with the software that I'm using, you can pre-record stuff and then just throw it on there. So when you learned how to play guitar, you didn't have any formal education, did you?
Nope. It was just self-teaching. I mean,
And I'm assuming there was, some element of self-discipline and there was an element of desire and so on.
oh yeah, that's how I learned how to do this.
One thing that I found interesting is that
Go ahead.
Well, you see, I'm trying to be quiet because whenever I do start talking, it winds up cutting. It does something with the Discord audio and makes it so that people can only hear snippets, and then it sounds like crap.
Ah.
So I'm trying not to ruin the musical experience of the viewers. Um, but now I lost track of what it was I was going to say. What was the context? Oh, it was about
Discipline.
discipline, and then also the expectations of musicians during different eras. Um, for example, all throughout the period, basically ending with the mid to late 19th century, people had higher expectations of musical performers than they do now. Specifically, people expected that, this whole artistic interpretation thing, where people, slow down and try to inject feeling and so on into the music, uh,
Mm-hmm.
was actually viewed as, or at least to my understanding, was viewed as a bad thing. Because you were supposed to play what it was that was in front of you at the speed suggested by the composer. And the speed suggested by the composer for an awful lot of the songs is so fast that people say, well, they can't possibly have meant that because you need to be a technical wizard in order to even get through a piece, let alone make it sound good.
Which is horseshit because some guy who sat alone in his basement routine doing drills can still go. Or in theory, I can. This, then it should not be difficult for someone who's like a musician by vocation to actually play something.
Well, it depends on how seriously somebody takes their vocation, I guess.
Whatever, I just play what sounds good. Ahem. Yeah.
You're supposed to say that after taking a bong hit. I love how I love how your face is off camera too.
Oh yeah, I made sure of that. Too bad I didn't take a hit of this vape so it would be like. Ah, damn it. Yeah, dude.
Oh, oh boy, this is so much fun.
Who is Legolas Bowmaster? Do we know you, good sir?
He's I think he's seen both of our streams before, but I'm not sure
Do we
who it
know you
is
from
for
before,
real.
good sir, or have you just happened by?
Quite lovely.
I do find it really funny that you're pointing out that I cannot play in major key.
Well, or just haven't. I'm assuming.
Not very often, and not very much.
Oh, that was funny. That was rich. It just fell straight toward the camera. The neck of the guitar fell straight toward the camera. Oh.
One moment. Around here somewhere. Where in tarnation are my guitar cables? I have like 10, and they're all running away and hiding.
Mm-hmm.
One moment. I'm gonna hook this bitch up to some juice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a coaxial cable. It's hard.
Right, well.
Well, never mind. I cannot find a single damn cable, and I know I have several. And I don't know where they ran off and hid.
Hmm. Well,
I
anyhow.
had them not too long ago.
Hmm. Well, with that said, I'm going to do a bit of reading.
You gonna do some reading?
Reading.
Yeah, I'll provide a quiet, soothing background music.
I done can't read, though. That's the only problem. I needs to pretend. You see, I didn't exactly make it out of preschool. So I missed out on all that spots where I teach you them letters and numbers and colors and such. So fun. Oh man, I would impute so little of my actual learning to school. Oh, and that
To
includes
school.
university. That includes
I know,
university.
right? I learned more about history from Age of Empires 2 than any history class I ever took.
That's horrible.
That was a great game, and it was very educational.
Your camera's kind of from the top. It's gone counterclockwise. Yeah, great.
There we go.
So anyhow, uh, the reason I'm making this particular transition is because it is time for the educational hour, and in general, I think that modern education sucks. So of course, I'm going to rip on it a little bit, even before starting to talk about a few historical figures and or specifically George Washington in this case and his educational background. And that's the reason I kind of make fun and say I don't know how to read. Because technically, I don't know how to read. I was stupid too. I got my GED when I was 19 or 20, 19. I was right before my 20th birthday. Right, it was like 19 years, 10 months or something when I took the test, or 11 months when I got 19 years, 11 months when I got my GED, and that was 4 years or 3.5 years after I graduated college. Okay, so if nothing tells you the nature of the educational system, it tells you that in order to have your T's dotted and your I's crossed, And believe me, it's having your T's dotted and your I's crossed. Um, you need to have graduated from high school. They don't like in order to get paperwork done. It doesn't matter if you graduated from college when you were 16 years old. It doesn't make a single bit of difference because if you didn't graduate from high school, you can't fill out some paperwork, and so you have to go and get a completely useless. I mean, like you have to waste 2 days going and taking an exam because you can't just go and sit down on one day and take the whole exam. No, you have to break the thing up into 2 days.
Why?
I mean, you took the GED. I'm assuming that you found it very, very difficult to pass, just like I did.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
But why did it take 2 days? I don't know. Um, and, and ultimately, okay, so you have your well, we're both from Ohio, so you have your OGTs, which I never took. And if I recall correctly, this is basically a test that you take as a sophomore. That if you pass it, you're allowed to graduate. And if you don't take it, then you have to take it. If you don't pass, then you have to take it again as a junior or again as a senior, whatever. And then you have SATs and ACTs, and then you just have your general course GPA and so on. And then if you drop out or whatever, don't finish high school for some reason, then you could go and get your GED later. But I don't know why they give you 2 days for taking the test. I really don't know. That doesn't make an iota of sense to me. You know, because if you actually are competent, if you actually know what's going on, you're not going to have any trouble with the GED. The only way that you'll ever start running into trouble with that is if you fail at basic things like reading comprehension, basic arithmetic, just these things. Like even you take a perfectly average or even below average student. Let's say that you take like a D and C student that deserves D's and C's. I would say if you start them and actually teach them right from the very beginning, say from the age of 7 onward, I would say that you'd be able to pass the GED with flying colors by the age of 10. That sort of a thing would not be unheard of. It would not be particularly difficult, assuming that people actually use the opportunity to educate the students as opposed to, just having state-sponsored babysitting. And the fact that people screw up on the GED is a sign, at least to me, that school has been nothing more than state-sponsored babysitting. And then if we go and we read about George Washington, it says, and this is an essay by John Taylor Gatto in his book, The Underground History of American Education, regarding George Washington. A good yardstick to measure how far modern schooling has migrated from the education of the past is George Washington's upbringing in the middle 18th century. Although Washington descended from important families, his situation wasn't quite the easeful life that suggests. The death of his father left him at 11 without Ben Franklin's best rudder, and the practice of primogeniture, which vested virtually the entire inheritance in the first son in order to stabilize social class, compelled Washington to either face the future as a ward of his brother, an unthinkable alternative for George, or to take destiny into his own hands as a boy. You probably already know how that story turned out, but since the course he pursued was nearly schoolless, its curriculum is worth a closer look. For the next few minutes, imagine yourself at school with Washington. George Washington was no genius. We know that from too many of his contemporaries to quibble. John Adams called him too illiterate, too unlearned, too unread for his station and reputation. Jefferson, his fellow Virginian, declared he liked to spend time chiefly in action, reading little. It was an age when everyone in Boston, even shoeblacks, knew how to read and count. It was a time when a working-class boy in a family of 13 like Franklin couldn't remember when he didn't know how to read. As a teenager, Washington loved two things, dancing and horseback riding. He pursued both with a passion that paid off handsomely when he became president. Large in physical stature, his appearance might have stigmatized him as awkward. Instead, he developed the agile strength of a dancer and an equestrian. He was able to communicate grace through his commanding presence, elan that counterpoised his large build at any gathering. Thanks to his twin obsessions, he met his responsibilities with the bearing of a champion athlete, which saved his life during the Revolution. In the midst of the fray, a British sharpshooter drew a bead on his target but found himself unable to pull the trigger because Washington bore himself so magnificently. George Mercer, a friend, described Washington as a young man in the following way. He is straight as an Indian, measuring 6 feet 2 inches in his stockings and weighing 175 pounds. His frame is padded with well-developed muscles, indicating great strength. British military superiority, including the best available war-making technology, would have made hash of a brainless commander in spite of his admirable carriage, so we need to analyze the curriculum which produced America's Fabius, as he was called. Washington had no schooling until he was 11. No classroom confinement, no blackboards. He arrived at school already knowing how to read, write, and calculate about as well as the average college student today. If that sounds outlandish, turn back to Franklin's curriculum and compare it with the intellectual diet of a modern gifted and talented class. Full literacy wasn't unusual in the colonies or early republic. Many schools wouldn't admit students who didn't know reading and counting because few schoolmasters were willing to waste time teaching what was so easy to learn. It was deemed a mark of depraved character if literacy hadn't been obtained by the matriculating student. Even the many charity schools operated by churches, towns, and philanthropic associations for the poor would have been flabbergasted at the great hue and cry raised today about difficulties teaching literacy. American experience proved the contrary. In New England and the Middle Atlantic colonies, where reading was especially valued, literacy was universal. The printed word was also valued in the South, where literacy was common, if not universal. In fact, it was general literacy among all classes that spurred the explosive growth of colleges in 19th century America, where even ordinary folks hungered for advanced forms of learning. Following George to school at 11 to see what the schoolmaster had in store would reveal a skimpy menu of studies, yet one with a curious gravity. Geometry, trigonometry, and surveying. You might regard that as impossible or consider it was only a dumbed-down version of those things. Some kids' game akin to the many simulations one finds today in schools for prosperous children. Simulated city building, simulated court trials, simulated businesses, virtual realities to bridge the gap between adult society and the immaturity of the young. But if George didn't get the real thing, how do you account for his first job as official surveyor for Culpeper County, Virginia, only 2,000 days after he first hefted a surveyor's transit in school? For the next 3 years, Washington earned the equivalent of about $100,000 a year in today's purchasing power, and this book was written at the point where now 100,000 that would be nearly 200,000 a year in today's money. It's probable his social connections helped this fatherless boy get the position, but in frontier society anyone would be crazy to give a boy serious work unless he actually could do it. Almost at once he began speculating in land. He didn't need a futurist to tell him which way the historical wind was blowing. By the age of 21 he had leveraged his knowledge and income into 2,500 acres of prime land in Frederick County, Virginia. Washington had no father as a teenager, and we know he was no genius, yet He learned geometry, trigonometry, and surveying when he would have been a 5th or 6th grader in our era. 10 years later, he had prospered directly by his knowledge. His entire life was a work of art in the sense it was an artifice under his control. He even eventually freed his slaves without being coerced to do so. Washington could easily have been the first king in America, but he discouraged any thinking on that score. And despite many critics, he was so universally admired, the seat of government was named after him while he was still alive. Washington attended school for exactly 2 years. Besides the subject mentioned at 12 and 13, and later he studied frequently used legal forms like bills of exchange, tobacco receipts, leases, and patents. From these forms, he was asked to deduce the theory, philosophy, and custom which produced them. By all accounts, this steeping in grown-up reality didn't bore him at all. I had the same experience with Harlem kids 250 years later, following a similar procedure in teaching them how to struggle with complex income tax forms. Young people yearn for this kind of guided introduction to serious things, I think. When that yearning is denied, schooling destroys their belief that justice governs human affairs. By his own choice, Washington put time into learning deportment, how to be regarded as gentleman by other gentlemen. He copied a book of rules which had been used at Jesuit schools for over a century, and with that his observations and what advice he could secure gathered his own character. Here's Rule 56, to let you see the flavor of the thing. Associate yourself with men of good quality if you esteem your own reputation. Sharp kid. No wonder he became president. Washington also studied geography and astronomy on his own, gaining a knowledge of regions, continents, oceans, and heavens. In light of the casual judgment of his contemporaries that his intellect was of normal proportions, you might be surprised to hear that by 18 he had devoured all the writings of Henry Fielding, Tobias Smollett, and Daniel Defoe, and read regularly the famous and elegant Spectator. He also read Seneca's Morals, Julius Caesar's Commentaries, and the major writing of other Roman generals like the historian Tacitus. At 16, the future president began writing memos to himself about clothing design, not content to allow something so important to be left in the hands of tradesmen. Years later, he became his own architect for the magnificent estate of Mount Vernon. While still in his 20s, he began to experiment with domestic industry where he might avoid the vagaries of international finance in things like cotton or tobacco. First, he tried to grow hemp for medicinal purposes, which didn't work out. Next, he tried flax. That didn't work either. At the age of 31, he hit on wheat. In 7 years, he had a little wheat business with his own flour mills and hired agents to market his own brand of flour. A little later, he built fishing boats. 4 years before the Declaration was written, he was pulling in 9 million herring a year. No public school in the United States is set up to allow a George Washington to happen. Washingtons in the bud stage are screened, browbeaten, or bribed to conform to a narrow outlook on social truth. Boys like Andrew Carnegie, who begged his mother not to send him to school and was well on his way to immortality and fortune at the age of 13, would be referred today for psychological counseling. Thomas Edison would find himself in special ed until his peculiar genius had been sufficiently tamed. Anyone who reads can compare what the American present does in isolating children from their natural sources of education, modeling them on a niggardly last, to what the American past proved about human capabilities. The effect of the forced schooling institution's strange accomplishment has been monumental. No wonder history has been outlawed.
I mean, like, in all honesty, Mike.
Can hear you.
There we go. In all honesty, I think that the main reason the school system persists is just because it's already there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it serves any very important purposes. And the thing is because it's there is not something that keeps things in place for very long.
Well, it's a social institution that exists for the purpose of, well, I guess institutionalized babysitting and establishment of some sort of comfort that, oh, my kids are being taken care of. Or at least my kids aren't going to get anything worse than anyone else around.
And nobody else's kids will get any better.
Yeah.
More importantly.
Of course, of course. So the whole purpose is homogenization, which is why I'm
Right.
avoiding it like the plague.
I think that the education system, for the most part, like I said, it exists because it already does, is the reason it stays around. But I think it can be dismantled, and I don't think it will be that difficult to do so.
Well, it'll just be interesting to see how teachers' unions push back.
It would be interesting to see what.
How teachers' unions push back.
Same way the legacy media is pushing back against the internet and loop.
Exactly. Although the thing is that teachers' unions do hold enough political clout that it is entirely possible that they will attempt to uh, they'll attempt to forbid homeschooling. I mean,
It won't work.
it won't work, but they've already tried.
Of course they have. They have money tied up in it. What we need to do is find ways to drain the money out of the school system so that it performs even worse, and then use that as a justification to defund it.
Well, just vote against all property tax increases,
There we go.
and then constantly, I don't know. You can propose legislature. You can propose, decreasing property taxes, and then people still gripe, "We're not getting funding enough for our thing." Okay, the average yearly uh, school expenditure per student in the United States is close to $11,000. So please do explain to me why better than average, meaning both better than average private schools and better than average, or private schools that are better than average public schools, can do the same or better at $6,000 a year. Hmm? Explain that. Then explain to me why throwing more money at the situation will make it better.
Because teachers want to make more money.
Okay. But if you left it up to the free market, then it would only be good teachers that get money anyway, right? And we can't possibly have that because teachers categorically are among the most poorly educated people in the workforce. And for the sake of our listeners, I'll explain what I mean. Obviously, you can say, okay, high school dropouts would be more poorly educated. Well, the question is, what kind of education are you getting if you drop out? All right, you're getting real world education of some sort, and the quality
On the
thereof is completely unstandardized. But in terms of standardized education, the razor, those who can do and those who can't teach, is largely true. Now, granted, you're going to find exceptions. You're going to find amazing teachers, people that do the teaching because that's what they think would be their legacy, or how they go and impact the world around them, and that's very good. But by and large, that is not most teachers. Most teachers are the people that barely scrape by in school.
I got a comment. Someone asked the question, Caleb Beers finished college? And I said no. And someone left a comment saying, how do you provide for yourself without a...
How do you provide for yourself without a college degree?
Yeah.
Care to answer that? I have a college degree, so I could tell you what I would do, but you don't have one, so obviously. Yeah, I don't actually see any of this in the chat. So what are you saying?
You'll see the comment. It's on the question, did Caleb Beers finish college?
Ah, okay. Oh, this is the Quora thing, not in the YouTube chat.
Right.
Well, would you care to share what it is that you're saying?
When I finish typing it, which will be in just a moment.
Okay. So in the meantime, while Caleb is typing, that's a very that's an interesting question in that it exposes a line of thought that may or may not be helpful depending on your circumstances. There are some kinds of college degrees that make sense to get. Degree in engineering would make sense because essentially you can go and become certified as an engineer, and then people will know, okay, this person can build buildings or design medical implements or whatever it may be. Medicine, I mean, certainly I can think of more free market alternatives to this kind of licensing, but as things currently exist, professional schools, pharmacy school, dental school, medical school, law school, engineering school, perhaps something in the sciences, but I think science education should be done much more differently than is currently being done, with a far, far greater emphasis in research and a far more independent learning when it comes to research that's already been done. And then people can go and get a classical education. People can go and learn the classical disciplines, and that could take place at a university if that's what people want. But it's totally possible to do those sorts of things completely outside of the realm of the schooling. Getting through college and getting an education may have a little bit of overlap here and there, but those Venn diagrams are by no means anywhere close to being one individual circle.
He asked, how do you provide for yourself without a college degree? Stressed about college a while, so I'd love to hear a backup plan if that fails. My response was, it's sad that society conditions people into valuing universities so much that questions like this seem sensible. I'm sorry that the people around you have convinced you that a college degree is even remotely necessary for making a living. Making a living in the world is not a thing that happens by way of rules or by way of following a checklist. It happens by way of you having a problem and pulling a solution out of your ass, degree or no degree.
And ultimately, if you're solving other people's problems, then they'll pay you for the solution,
Right.
assuming that it's worth it to them.
Right.
And if it's not worth it to them, well, then maybe they either don't realize the problem, which could easily be the case. I mean, that's what marketing departments are for, right? Or
Right.
the solution actually isn't something that they need. So, what is it really that you need? You need ingenuity, or just plain old tenacity. You might not even need to do anything new per se. I mean, there are lots of
Initiative
problems.
and stubbornness.
Initiative and stubbornness, yes.
Start and don't stop.
And
That's
then
about it.
so that whole tenacity thing. Yeah, that definitely. And then if you want to innovate something, a spark of ingenuity, a spark of creativity, a new idea or whatever, can help. But then you have to test that idea. You have to refine that idea. You can't just let an idea be. You have to pursue it. And lots of ideas will fail. As we were reading before, George Washington failed in many business ventures until he succeeded in starting his own wheat business. So, this idea that you just follow a cookie cutter path for you, yeah, well, you may be able to get cookie cutter results at least for a while. But in a job market that is changing so very much in the present day, where automation will cause there to be paradigm shifts in pretty much every conceivable field, you need to be adaptable. You need to be able to learn. You need to be able to respond to conditions, and that's not necessarily something school will ever teach. School isolates you from real life. Real life is a teacher, and real life is the best teacher because you have skin in the game.
It's also because there's only one set of rules that matters. What are they, Matt?
Well, utilitarianism comes to mind, at least in many aspects.
Cause and effect.
Mm-hmm. If you don't, yeah. If you don't do the right things, the wrong things are going to happen to you. And if you divorce cause from effect, then you wind up having all sorts of problems because you wind up teaching the wrong lessons. You wind up conditioning yourself to wrong things, which is what many aspects of school does. School teaches you to hate failure.
Teaches you to what?
Hate failure. School teaches you to hate failure, to fear failure. I mean, I don't like failing, but the fact of the matter is, I hate mediocrity even more. And so, I mean, I've failed more than most people have tried in a lifetime. But that also means that the few successes that come are built on a lot of learning. Because the learning happens from failing, assessing the situation, and acting accordingly. What would acting accordingly be? Well, you say, well, okay, I'll try a new variation of the same theme. Or I'll change the theme entirely. Or I'll change the problem that I'm solving entirely. You just have to be able to do that honest assessment and do it from a position of not getting so much of your identity tied up in the problem that you're solving that you let it become an emotional burden. Because I know that lots of people, if they fail at something, it winds up nearly crippling them for life, to the point where they don't know how to deal with anything anymore because they weren't allowed to fail when they were little, and failure was stigmatized to the point where they wound up getting this horrible adverse emotional reaction to failure. Whereas if it's just one of those things that you dust yourself off, shrug it off, and move forward while everyone else is busy being a crybaby, you will eventually be a success.
There you go. And I think that part of it is that people get the idea that everything is a game, like there's always some set of rules or some rubric that you follow, and that if you do it right and check all the boxes, you get A, B, C, or D.
And people think that because they've been conditioned to think that because that's how school works.
Right. Whereas the idea of that it's cause and effect, that here you are in the world, it's not a video game with a limited number of buttons to push and actions you can take. It's not an assignment with a definite rubric. It's the real world. You can do anything you want, and you'll get, in effect, a consequence for that action. That's it. This, incidentally, is also the basis of conservative thinking.
Say that again. You broke up.
This, incidentally, is also the basis of conservative thinking. You can do whatever you want, and there will be a consequence, and that is all.
Conservative thinking, how so?
As opposed to, this is a socially acceptable thing to do, so let's make sure that, well, let me think of the back and forth here. This is something that I want to do, so I'm going to rationalize it and try to get everybody to tolerate it. Versus, this act, I want this result, so I'm going to do things that bring it about.
So it's the difference in between associating with the world like an adult and associating with the world like a spoiled child.
Right.
Oh boy, I really, really, really hope my kids don't turn out spoiled.
You really what?
I really, really, really hope my kids don't turn out spoiled.
Your kids, you said?
Yes. I hope they do not turn out spoiled.
Well, you know how to avoid that, and you'll do the things to bring it about.
Yeah, don't shield them from the effects of their actions. Let them experience real life. And let whatever good or bad consequences come to them in full measure. And then, of course, if we foresee as parents that there is something that it has such a deleterious effect that it could actually be a pose a long-term problem, like death or serious injury or something
like
really, really bad.
Isopropanol.
Yes.
That's one experiment with your gut microbiome not be doing, Maria.
Exactly. Yeah, those kinds of things. It's some. But if you want to, their mom or I can go and say, do this or don't do that. And, well, it's interesting because don't stand in the stroller. And what happens when you stand in the stroller and you lose your balance and you fall flat on your face? Well, what happens when you say, don't touch that? Don't touch the oven door, it's hot. You touch the oven door.
When you touch it and they get burned.
There are these very basic elements of living that, or at least our parents' generation, and it's interesting because the trend is starting to move the opposite direction, Where you say, oh, you shouldn't let your children get burnt by the oven door. Oh, you shouldn't let your children fall flat on their face. You should put them in a padded room instead so that they can wind up having cause and action, or cause and effect, severed from one another. You shouldn't... I mean, I still remember when I was climbing a tree when I was little. Like, I was probably too little to be up as far up in the tree as I was, but I was up in the tree as far as I had gotten anyway. So I yelled for my dad and asked him to help me down. To which he responded,
Nope.
I've never seen a dead boy up in a tree.
I've never seen a dead boy up in a tree.
Yep.
So you're not dead yet, so no.
And, you know,
You climbed back down.
and I climbed back down. I was incredibly shaky. I still remember him doing that and then just leaving me alone. Like, I know that he was periodically checking up to see if he would actually have to call an ambulance or something, but
Right.
but he let me
Think you were alone.
yeah,
So you had to do it yourself.
I had to do it myself. And I got down.
I was fairly sheltered growing up, but I do remember one incident when my grandfather on my mom's side was alive. He would tell her to shut up and she'd listen. And I had never been allowed to climb trees. I was one of those. And I stated that I would like to climb a tree. And he said, well, go in the garage right there. Well, he had a very deep, grindy voice accent, kind of like your "Will you be my neighbor" voice. Kind of sounded like that. Said, well, there's ropes in the garage over there. You want to climb a tree? Climb a tree. So I went and got a rope. And, you know, my mom set up this, oh, no, don't let him. Shut up. And I didn't quite know how to use a rope to climb a tree, but I figured it out in short order, and I got up in the tree.
I've never
Got
used a
back
rope
down.
to climb a tree.
This particular tree, there were no branches low enough to grab.
Ah.
But if you threw a rope over
Mm-hmm.
up against a tree, you could,
Yeah.
you know, sort of reverse rope walk up the tree. And that's how I got up in it.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't go get me the rope. He didn't even tell me where they were. He just said they were in the garage, and I found them.
Yeah. And getting to struggle with these things. Oh man, and
I loved it. It was fantastic.
yeah. And having kids struggling with the things, struggling with learning the things themselves at a very young age. Allowing the struggle. Teaching them to embrace the struggle. Not cutting the world into 45,
Manageable.
55, or 65-minute segments and trying to... This is what you're going to learn today. This is what you're going to learn tomorrow. This is what you're going to learn the day after.
Sick.
No. I'm going to climb a tree today, go climb a tree. Oh, you want to design an airplane wing? Well, guess what? You got a little bit of learning to do, buddy. Here, let me drive you to the university library if you need to go anywhere.
Let me drive you to the university library. What?
If you need to go there.
Did your father do that?
I mean, I had been to the Ohio State University Library. I've also been... I found a lot of what I needed in the Columbus Metropolitan Library System. It was also really cool because in the early days of the internet, you actually had to know how to search things out. And there was an awful lot of really, really, really cool stuff. There was a lot of good information. And if you learn how to get a hold of somebody and just ask them a question, just ask an expert a question, they often will answer you. I mean, reaching out to the person in the world that can tell you what you need to know is a reasonable way of learning what you need to learn. Now, you don't go and say to the person, hey, will you design an airplane for me?
Right.
You don't do that. That's like saying, or yeah, will you design an airplane for me? Or will you fund my asininely stupid business idea?
Right.
No. And then people hate me. People hate me. No, people don't hate you. But they are constrained by the restrictions that reality imposes. And if, unfortunately, the school has done you, or your parents have done you, or somehow the disfavor has been done you that has divorced you so far from reality that you don't know what's real and what's not anymore, then sometimes the only thing that will actually, in that case, pretty much the only thing that will ever teach you is either learning by the school of hard knocks or somehow getting your hands on the right information. And more often than not, it's the school of hard knocks that teaches in that case.
And in that case, intelligence can be measured by how many knocks it takes for you to respond.
Yes. Or inversely
If you're smart,
described.
you'll respond after the first one.
Mm-hmm. And still, every single hard knock can be a course correction. And it doesn't even need... You can have a very hard knock that necessitates a very minor course correction, too. It's like, do you disproportionately respond to the hard knocks, or do you proportionately respond? How do you do that? And yeah, that would be a measure of intelligence. But even an unintelligent person, given enough hard knocks, will get,
Will get their shit together.
Yeah, it's like those gutters on the edges of bowling alleys, or bowling alley lanes. It's like you can hit the gutter bouncy thing once and still have your, or you can go back.
Right.
Or if we don't like that analogy, we say, yeah, your ball will go into the gutter, and however much you compensate, you're not going to hit down any pins at all until you wind up finally aiming straight, and you're, oh, well, I got that. Which is interesting that that's what sin is. From the old-time theological perspective, is missing the mark. Sin is failure to aim properly. Sin is throwing a gutter ball.
Right.
And it's interesting because if you treat sin that way, as opposed to getting completely bent out of shape over it, and of course there are things that one can do that has a really deleterious effect on other people that I really don't mind, if there was a death penalty for convicted rapists, or whatever it might be, like that's fine. But for things that are of a more minor nature than something that is completely
heinous,
then just say, okay, make restitution for whatever it is that you've stolen. Make restitution for whatever it is that you've destroyed.
No, if teenagers defacing your mailbox or whatever, and you catch him out there, maybe you should just be allowed to thrash him, and that's it.
Or thrash him and make him build you a new one.
Right. And you don't
go down to the hardware store.
You don't get any blowback from that, and neither does he, other than what you give him.
I mean, I think blowing up a mailbox is a federal offense, right? So that would be. Right. I'm thinking that the kind of punishment that could be potentially given would be disproportionate to the crime. If you get the living crap beaten out of you, and then get sent to the hardware store with $40, say, go buy a bunch of wood, you're building me a new mailbox, dude, and by the way, you're going to be working off this $40 at a rate of $5 an hour, so you better be prepared to work 8 hours for me in addition to this restitution in order to restore the money that I've spent on the materials. So be it. I mean, that's a small price to pay for breaking a mailbox, and there are lots of great lessons to be learned in that process that would never be taught by the current iteration of the justice system. So, yeah, divorcing cause and effect is a very bad thing, and it is a disservice to whoever you do that to. The punishment for sin, and the way that you deal with it yourself. Let's say, and I was reading a piece about this just a little while ago. Is if you deal with things as if they are a bigger deal than they are, you give them more power over you. For instance, if you deal with, I don't know, let's say someone is an alcoholic, and that person goes and says, alcoholism is really, 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 really bad, etc. Yeah, sure, it's a vice. Sure, it would be a sin. You're missing the mark. You're wasting your life away. You're ruining your liver, and so on. But if you stigmatize it to the point where any relapse at all is a life or death thing, you blow it out of proportion.
Which is why Alcoholics Anonymous is a problem.
Yeah, whereas if you go and liken overconsumption of booze to overconsumption of chips or something, it's like, oh, well, yeah, all I have to do is throw away this bag of potato chips, and that's it.
Right.
Okay, you just treat it contemptuously. Treat it as if it is nowhere near as significant as people go and put, or the stigma would indicate. Laugh at it as opposed to calling it anything strong, and watch how quickly you have victory over it. Like,
right.
act as if the thing that you need to do is a small thing. Act as if the thing that you need to do, yeah. Then you wind up at least adopting the right mindset toward it. Getting up every day and making your bed. Oh, that's such a big thing. I can't possibly. No, just
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 0. Get out of bed. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it. And if you have that, oh, I'm just doing it. Then pretty soon, oh, I just ran a marathon. Okay. I guess I'll run a 50K in another 2 months. Oh, I just finished the first 20 pages of my thesis. Okay, I just did it.
Oh, I just cured cancer.
And that is, I think, a more healthy attitude than this disproportionately blowing things out of proportion and saying that something is big when it's not. Like, if you're going to err, if it is an error at all, err on the side of just taking life as it comes and acting accordingly, divorcing yourself somewhat from the expectation of getting immediate results, but still using the results, simultaneously using the results that you get as a feedback mechanism for what you're going to do next time. And then when you do succeed, moving on to the next thing that you intend to do. Oh, hi Solana. How long have you been here? I didn't have the chat open.
Miss Pulpa?
So, yeah, that's that. And I've noticed that people that haven't taken primary and secondary schooling all that seriously tend to do better at that aspect of life. You know, you don't throw a party at every little thing that you do. Oh, good job, Timmy. You no. And you don't necessarily do that for yourself either. I mean, you can be excited and you can demonstrate emotion, but don't. You know, if you wind up, you know, selling a business for $1 billion or something, then yeah, that might be uh, subject of you know, you might throw a party for that.
I'd rather not be different on any occasion, honestly. I'd want for people to find me the same no matter what state I'm in, so to speak.
Yeah, but if there is something that's actually worth celebrating, then yeah, I'd say celebrating it's okay. Like, I'm probably going to
I feel
celebrate when
good
I wind
about
up.
it.
Yeah.
I quit celebrating birthdays a while back. It just seemed kind of silly.
Well, I think that celebrating birthdays is also silly, but my wife likes doing it, so I still do it.
Oh, the wife.
Yes.
It's funny.
I actually think that if I wound up selling a company for $1 billion, I might actually invite some close friends over and celebrate it just by saying, "Ha! Now we have a little bit more funds liquid. Let's go, you know, blow up a rock or something."
I'd be into it.
I mean, it just seems like something that would be fun, but I don't think that I would be able to. I don't think that even. I don't know if I'm capable of having that big of a reaction. I'm capable, I suppose, but. Well, with that said, I think now is about time. I mean, we're already about half an hour overdue for an 8-minute intermission. Why in the world does it say 4? There we go. So I'm going to get rid of our noise, leave the music playing, and then invite you all back in another 8 minutes to continue the stream. Oh dear. Alright. I am so sorry. After, yeah, there's a particular thing I need to do after a break in order to get the Oh, nice. Yeah. Having two monitors. I used to have two monitors until I moved to Finland. Then my computer came and one of my monitors stayed. So what are you eating, Caleb?
Junk food.
Uh-oh. Well, I made coffee ice cream yesterday. Which means I failed at making coffee ice cream yesterday, actually, if I'm going to be honest. I had too much coffee and not enough ice cream. Well, one of the very nice things about ice cream, and unfortunately it wasn't the case this time, but you can make ice cream with xylitol or stevia. So you can make ice cream that doesn't do anything, or does very, very little to your blood sugar. In fact, I would highly recommend, if any of you are interested in remaining healthy and eating something tasty anyway, invest in an ice cream machine and learn how to make good ice cream. Like just do the whole cause and effect thing. Start with a recipe. Think, okay, how can I cut the sugar out of it? Well, replace the sugar with an equal volume of xylitol. Well, that goes and gives you a weird texture. So what else can you do? Maybe add some sort of a fibrous fruit, or maybe try stevia, or I mean, just don't expect it to be perfect the first time you do it. Make a bunch of iterations. Keep track of what you do. Keep a notebook. I know a guy who has been making steaks for years, and they're among the best steaks I've ever had. And every single steak he makes, he writes down exactly what he does in a book. And exactly what the result was. He asks for feedback from all of his guests regarding the steak that he serves. And because there's this constant refining, every single steak you get will on average be marginally better than the previous. Certainly some things might fail, some new ideas might fail, but by and large the trajectory goes in the right direction. And so, keeping track of the series of causes and effects, even in little things like making a steak, or little things like making ice cream, or big things like physical fitness, or big things like running a business, or big things like planning your career, or having a family, and so on. Keeping track of cause and effect throughout the course of time is very important. Caleb, can you please say something?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, there we are. Yeah, it works. Great. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to work on this interface to make it a little bit easier to have a break. Because I keep on screwing things up in the same exact way. which is not good. Which means I need to go and give myself some feedback. There. There we go. I left myself a note. That way I won't make the same mistake again. Marginal improvement. Then I can just go and make another mistake and learn from it. How far do you intend to go running today, Caleb?
A mile. Well, technically 0.8 miles. That's up to the gas station.
That ain't bad. I'm wondering how far I should run. Because I've been doing a lot more biking recently. And the last time I went running, I went 6.2 kilometers, so that's like what 3 point. Well, it's 200 yards shy of. It's 200 yards shy of 4 miles. But that was 2 weeks ago. I haven't done anything other than a little sprinting and then a whole bunch of bike riding since. And still I weigh 4 pounds less than I did last week. Yay! You look like you're thinking intently about something. Caleb.
Oh, I'm reading a bit here and there.
Raiden, where'd you learn to read?
Oh, well, I'm pretending to read to look smart, actually.
So you actually don't know how to read.
Right, I just pretend to look smart.
Got it.
I'm curious as to what Miss Popa's accent sounds like in English.
How do you know she has one at all? Or at least,
She's Brazilian, I believe.
so? That doesn't mean that she has an accent while speaking. I know Finns that speak. Tuberculosis. Bike riding. Keto diet, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, she certainly does sound Brazilian.
Okay. Yeah. Keto diet is very useful. I like having about 80 to 85% of what I eat to be fat. Yeah, and patience. The only concern with bike riding is if you are male, that it can cause problems for your prostate. So do act accordingly, because prostate cancer is a nasty one. Yeah, it does take patience, and it's interesting because if your diet is too different from mainstream, it becomes more and more difficult to to do it because you have to be more deliberate about what it is that you put into your body. You have to think more about what it is that you're eating, and then also the impact that your diet has on the people around you. And so I wound up, we're doing low carb, but not completely no carb. You know, and obviously vegetables are nice and good and healthy and so on. But the idea is basically that you eat healthy and that your whole family eats healthy. If you're living by yourself, that's one thing. But if you're living with other people, having one person eating a different diet than everybody else, unless there's like an allergy or something, is really is a huge waste of time and energy. And I mean, I've lost pretty close to, yeah, I've lost 33, 34, 35, 36. I've lost almost 40 pounds in the past year or so. So, yeah, I was at one point even a bigger fat ball than I am now. It's just amazing how much more quickly it goes off at the beginning, and then how kind of tapers away. But then also by having certain foods just not in the house, which is what it takes for me to have the appropriate discipline. My wife also wound up losing some weight. I mean, she didn't need to lose weight anywhere, like at all, really. But she still wound up losing some of the weight, and she looks way better now than when we got married. So it's very rare to be able to say that, and for a woman to be able to say, yeah, I look better now than when I got married. I look better after 2 kids. It's interesting. She weighed less after popping out our son than she did when getting pregnant with him. And I literally mean the day after we got home. That'll happen. But these consistent changes, they're just things that need to be done. If you determine, okay, I need to do this, well, then what's stopping you from doing it? Get rid of whatever's stopping you, and then you're fine. Young whippersnapper. Whippersnapper.
I can say that because I'm an old man.
We are all millennials. That's the term, right?
Yes. You're 25, 26, Matt? Matt?
I'm counting.
Um,
It's going to be my 26th.
I am this many.
My 26th birthday is going to be on August 1st.
Ah.
I'm the young whippersnapper. It's interesting because I find myself either being reasonably older than the people I'm around or reasonably younger than the people I'm around. Like, I don't and haven't been able to find too many of my own age peers to hang out with at any point in my life. It's just very strange to me. Who do you find yourself spending the most time with? Caleb?
Yes, I answered.
Well,
I was doing this. Friends who were all roughly my age, and I stopped hanging that much because I just decided I didn't care. And occasionally old friends. The people I gravitate toward in like informal situations. Those that would usually be. Matt, are you actually drinking alcohol?
that's water.
Oh. I gravitate toward people in like late middle age, I guess, 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm. Well, that group of people and older, I think, are really awesome. In general, to spend time with. Lots of people go and say, "Oh, well, they're over the hill. They don't know what they're talking." It's like they're over the hill. They're the only ones that know what they're talking about. Like there's absolutely no way they can't relate to where we are at or where we were 10 years ago. Late middle-aged to old folks, they're awesome.
I do like talking to people who are very, very old and asking them things when we're younger. That's always an eye-opener.
Mm-hmm. And mostly what I hear from my grandmother, it's values related.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much she talks about it on the basis of values, rather. Like, oh, well, this is what we believe, this is how we did things, this is what life was like, and so on. And she kind of had this expectation that people would be mannerly, people would behave with good manners. And was constantly disappointed because even having grown up in a family that was, well, basically full of alcoholics, there were certain societal expectations that had existed that don't exist today, that greased the wheels of the social machine, or somehow served as social lubricant. And because those rules don't exist to the same extent as they did, people, I think, have a difficult time understanding respectful interaction. Like, respectful interaction is something that my grandma has always been able to engage in with pretty much anybody. So looking at the social skills that, she was born in 1930. So looking at, she was a depression age lady, looking at the social skills that she had developed throughout that particular course of time, and trying to take even just a little bit of it makes what few social interactions I ever do take part in go really, really well.
I see.
Well, we have 15 minutes left, and there's this lovely shortcut cut short piece.
Which one of us reads it? Your stream.
You can read it. Go, please do. Please do. I'm sure that sounds like you want to read it.
I do.
Oh, shortcut cut short. Hee. There, I put it into the chat box.
Summer 1990, Canada. Although this story does not qualify for a Darwin, I'd like to share the most spectacular case of extreme stupidity I've ever seen. I am known as Horse. An armored regiment stationed in Calgary, we were hosting elements of the British Army at Canada's main training centre in Wainwright, Alberta. We took some of our new British friends to town to party at the Wainwright Hotel bar. Around 1 a.m., we decided to save cab money and walk back to the base. This was a trek of about 3 miles, because one must detour around a large, fenced pasture to reach the front gate. That pasture holds some of the last plains bison in Canada, a herd of about 40 animals. Bison are not the friendliest ruminants on the planet. Safety signs are posted every 10 feet along the fence, and warnings read, unless you can cross this pasture in 9 seconds, do not attempt it. The bison can do so in 10. We reached the pasture and started to walk around it, but one of our drunken Brit companions decided that the warnings were fake. Real, live buffalo don't exist. Despite our protests, he opted for a cut. He hopped over the 5-foot fence and disappeared in the field. We watched and waited. Seconds later, a high-pitched and very un-British profanity was heard from the pasture, and our friend came tearing back toward the fence at a speed that would have done credit to Donovan Bailey, the fastest man in the world. A fully mature and quite unhappy plains bison thundered behind him. The only reason the young gunner survived was sheer fear-induced acceleration. He vaulted the 5-foot fence without breaking stride. His rear foot caught on the top rail, sending him spinning into the grass on the safe side, half a second before 2,000 pounds of extremely unfriendly hamburger smashed into the fence at full steam. The fence is constructed of extremely solid steel pipes, yet the 2-foot dent made by the bison remains to this day. The animal staggered, snorted, shook his head, and rumbled off with a splitting headache. Our friend escaped with a broken ankle, moderate concussion, dislocated shoulder, and a great deal of bleeding from his uncontrolled landing. Had he not cleared the fence, he would have been pile-driven to smithereens by the huge bull. Fear had drained the alcohol from our systems, but we were still laughing too hard to be too sympathetic as we gave him first aid and summoned help.
That is so horrible. This is
When I first read that, I cackled. That was a cackle.
That was one of the best stories I have read.
Real live bison don't exist. 10 seconds later.
Yes, indeed. Un-British. I love how it was a loud un-British profanity was screamed at high pitch or something. However he phrased it. Like, and we all know what we all know, because there are certain words that Brits generally don't use, and yeah. Oh boy, that's one of my favorites. Yeah, the Darwin Awards website is well. I will
It reminds me of this picture, if I can find it. The bird in this picture is that guy.
The bird in the picture is that guy. If you send it to me on WhatsApp, I'll be able to read it. I can't read it on Discord because I'm screen capturing.
It's in the chat box.
Ah. Oh boy. I like Darwin Awards. They remind me of certain. I'll actually put the picture up here. I just took a screenshot of the I took a screenshot of site. That's what it looks like, or at least that's what one of the many pictures on the site looks like. It is such a it's just so perfect. And I remember just as a teenager with my little brother, we would just read this and laugh we would laugh for hours on end as to the abject stupidity of the people.
The worst one is the guy who tries to wash his balls in the ball washer machine at the golf course.
I don't know if you can
That ranks up there on the very short list of things that can cause my balls to retract back inside of me.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yep.
That reminds me of another picture. Don't worry, it's safe for work.
Okay.
Someone edited the cover of this sci-fi novel
Oh no.
into something wonderful, honestly.
That didn't happen. It couldn't have. You would be surprised at people's stupidity. If someone can think it up, someone can do it. The what?
Read the little blurb in the lower left-hand side.
Paperback Paradise?
Above that.
Oh, ball retracting sci-fi surveyor.
A ball retracting tail.
Oh, that's horrible.
Ball retract. Dick river.
So very nice. We still have time for a little bit more. Do you have another Darwin Awards story that you... What was the...
Oh, I've got a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have a perfect one. Oh, man. Let me see here.
Oh, boy.
Let me see here.
There's a personal account. There's the gas spill. 1993, Pennsylvania. I will be the first to admit that this only qualifies as an at-risk survivor. But how many people get the prosecution to request a mental competency hearing? In Pittsburgh, my roommate's coworker was gassing up her car. The automatic shutoff didn't engage, so when the tank was full, a little gas overflowed. When she realized this, she declared she wasn't paying for the gas on the ground. She would only pay for what was in the car. The attendant stated she had to pay for all the gas she had pumped. She reiterated that not all of it went into her car. She said, "Watch, I'll prove it." Prove it she did. She threw her lit cigarette on the ground where the gas spilled. The puddle ignited. Fortunately, they were able to put out the fire before anything worse happened. While listening to the testimony at her, with the prosecutor asked,
apparently just supposedly put on.
There we go. Okay, please do continue. Now,
This guy had a broomstick
okay.
that he attached to the floor, and he was wearing nothing but a pair of lederhosen, so the legend. And the lederhosen had springs attached to them that were also attached to the floor, and he was bouncing on the broomstick. And the springs broke. And that killed him.
That sounds painful.
Yeah.
Sounds very, very painful. But that's an urban legend. Or is not verified as true. Yeah. This sort of a thing is quite difficult. But anyhow, we're about at that point. A couple minutes left. So we're going to thank everyone who was watching, and thank you especially, Caleb, for showing up and for providing so much music and insight and so on.
And for threatening to forcibly sodomize anyone who didn't show up.
Yes. It seems like you have your work cut out for you, because there's about 7.5 billion people that didn't heed your warning.
Hey, I'm the sodomitic Santa.
Ugh.
I can visit them all in one night. Will you be my neighbor?
Oh, on that lovely note, thank you, everyone, and good night to those of you for whom this is nighttime. Good day to those of you for whom this is daytime. Good morning or good evening, or yeah, I'm actually bidding you whatever time it happens to be, that it be good. All right. See ya.